What is it like to have a hearing loss? The simplest answer is that you miss bits of words, sections of conversation, key parts of stories, and a frighteningly large part of your world. An annoying proportion is either blurry or fuzzy, or both. Understanding what people are trying to tell you becomes at best difficult, and at worst, impossible. Everybody with hearing problems should consider ways to improve their communication methods and their listening environments. Tactics such as lip reading and sensible venue selection, and how you position yourself in a room, and how well you manage ambient noise are all important. So let's talk a little more about these approaches, starting with tried and tested hearing strategies. Hearing strategies are methods people can use to increase their understanding of speech. People use hearing strategies separately from, or in conjunction with, hearing aids or assistive listening devices. Because people with hearing impairment have a reduced ability to discriminate between sounds and to focus on preferred sounds while ignoring background noise, they will need to use hearing strategies to communicate effectively in as many environments as possible. There are 3 categories of hearing strategy. 1. Observation. 2. Manipulating social interactions. And 3. Managing and manipulating the physical environment. The first, observation, is all about the talker and his or her surroundings. Lip reading is the key observation skill to develop. Considerable information can be gained from watching people's lips carefully. Many people, including those with normal hearing, watch lips naturally or subconsciously in difficult listening situations. The best way to assess your lip reading skill level is to ask your audiologist to test your current lip reading ability with live speech testing. To lip read, you must be able to see the talker's lips clearly. This may involve moving or asking the talker to remove his or her hands from in front of their face. The positive statement, "I can understand you much better when I can see your lips clearly," is all it takes to obtain the speaker's cooperation. Next, there are non-verbal signals. These include facial gestures such as smiling, frowning, and looks of surprise, confusion, or disgust. Each conveys very clearly the tone of the message and the attitude of the speaker. When we understand the non-verbal message, this helps our brain fill in the words which aren't heard. Physical gestures and body positioning often also reinforce the message and the way in which the speaker wishes it to be understood. Speech reading involves combining the skills of lip reading and interpreting and understanding non-verbal signals. Filling in the gaps is a skill which can be developed with practice. Missing words can often be guessed based on knowing the topic, knowing who the talker is, observing his or her facial expressions, and being in suitable physical surroundings. It is appropriate and sensible to guess at the meaning of missed words based on all the evidence available to the listener. If you become too uncertain as to the accuracy of the guesses, check with the talker about your interpretations by using some simple techniques, which I'll share with you soon. One hearing strategy used, consciously or subconsciously, by some hearing impaired people is to dominate the conversation by either talking more loudly than the others involved or by talking over the top of other people so that the hearing impaired person rarely has to listen. If this approach sounds familiar to you, it's probably worth giving some thought to the obvious negative social consequences of this strategy. The good news is that, as I've said, there are simple, easy to implement alternative techniques you can use which result in far more positive reactions and productive outcomes from those you're currently using while trying to communicate. The first of these strategies is clear speaking. To achieve clear speech amongst family members, you simply need to ask your communication partners to speak more clearly by slowing the pace at which they speak. Just let them know that if they pause between words and sentences and overpronounce each word, that it will make it much easier for you to follow what's being said. The vast majority of people will appreciate knowing how they can make talking to you more effective and enjoyable for both of you. Where there is background noise, increasing the volume of your and others' speech will improve everyone's understanding. However, shouting is counterproductive as it tends to distort clarity and make the situation unnatural and not as relaxed and pleasant as it should be. The second simple strategy you can use is to gain the listener's attention. Sometimes when we're focusing on something like TV, radio, a book, or some other activity requiring close attention, we miss the first few words of someone's first sentence directed at us. Regular conversation partners can be asked and trained to assist you by gaining your attention before talking to you. In challenging listening conditions, this can be done by a touch, but in most circumstances it can be achieved just by saying your name, then pausing until your attention is gained, and then, and only then, talking. In a group setting, hearing impaired people may find it hard to quickly identify who is talking, especially if their localisation ability is impaired. The assistance of the group can be sought to ensure that only one person talks at a time. The third strategy is to be made aware of the topic of the conversation before any discussion begins. Knowing the topic makes it much easier for a person to correctly guess the words which are not heard or only partially heard. Shy or unassuming individuals typically need considerable encouragement if they are to break into the conversations of others to ask what's being talked about. An easy solution is to take one friend aside and have them tell you what the topic is. For meetings, try to be made aware of all the agenda items beforehand. The next helpful approach is what we call the repair strategy. When you have missed a key word or phrase, there is a simple technique for obtaining the missing information in a way that involves minimal disruption to the ongoing conversation. Here are some examples of what you can do. First, you can repeat the words preceding the words you weren't able to hear clearly enough, and do so with a questioning tone of voice, accompanied by a questioning facial expression. For example, you could say,
"Sorry, on Sunday you went..."
The speaker will then be able to answer your simple, polite question. Second, you can ask a specific question which indicates what was heard and what was not heard. For example, if the person speaking says,
"We went fishing on the Murray River yesterday,"
but the listener only hears,
"We went fishing on the Murray River yesterday,"
the listener can ask,
"Which river were you fishing on?"
rather than asking the speaker to repeat the whole sentence. And finally, there's another easy repeating and rephrasing technique you can employ. All you need to do is repeat to the speaker what you thought you heard to check that it was heard correctly.
"Did you say you would like a cup of tea?"
As the listener, you can also ask the speaker to rephrase a sentence, asking him or her to give you the message in a different way.
"Sorry dear, could you say that again please? I'm not quite sure what you meant."
If it's an important message, you can always ask that the key word you couldn't hear be spelt out slowly for you. If there are numbers which need to be clarified, this can be done by the speaker by identifying the numbers leading up to the actual number. For example,
"I'd like 5 apples, please. 3, 4, 5 apples."
All of these simple techniques reassure the person speaking to you that they are mostly being understood. The approaches described will also minimise the time you need to gather the missing information you need as the listener. Now, let's talk about another important way to help people help you, which is what they want to do. Disclosing your hearing loss to them is an excellent and proven strategy. The reassuring truth is that people generally want to help you. Letting them know that you have a hearing loss and are struggling to hear them clearly will usually enable the talker to make a concerted effort to improve their enunciation, voice projection and clarity, and increase the volume at which they speak to you. Don't be afraid to let people know your needs. A little friendly humour invariably helps in these situations and allows your communication partners to be more open about changes that may need to be made to help communicating effectively easier for you and them. The environment you're in has a bigger bearing on effective communication than you might imagine. Managing your environment sensibly can lead to substantial improvements in your ability to enjoy easy conversation with others. The most important environment aid is good lighting, particularly in those crucial locations with poor acoustics. The main objective is to ensure there is light on the speaker's face. This will assist greatly with speech reading. It will sometimes be necessary to move or ask the person talking to move into a slightly better light. For example, if the talker is sitting with a back to a window or lamp, the listener has the double disadvantage of looking into a bright light while trying to see the talker's face and lips, which are relatively dimly lit. Another important factor to consider is positioning. It's the key to easy listening. The closer we sit to the person talking, the clearer their speech becomes and the better we can hear them over any background noise. I know it's difficult for us to overcome long-held habits of trying to communicate from another room, but it really is crucial to change this habit if you're keen to communicate more effectively. The principle of getting close to the talker applies whether the talker and the listener are the only two people in a room or whether there are 100 other people there too. This may seem obvious, but if you have better hearing on one side, it's best to sit with your good ear to the speaker, as the head acts as an obstacle that makes a considerable difference to the sound reaching the ear furthest away. In the end, face-to-face communication is the key. It ensures that the sounds reach the listener at the greatest possible volume level, and the listener can also put speech reading skills into practice. To the extent that it's possible, it's important to minimise the amount of nearby noise. Generally, people with hearing loss experience a reduced ability to hear clearly when there's a lot of background noise. Noise has such a disturbing effect that any reduction in the noise level will enable easier hearing and understanding. The simple noise reduction solutions include turning the TV or radio volume off or down, closing a door to block the disturbing noise sources, and moving to a quieter place to talk. The amount of reverberation in some rooms can make hearing harder, particularly where there are lots of hard wall surfaces and bare timber floors for the sound waves to bounce off. To minimise the reverberation in your home, you can do a number of things. Try adding soft furnishings such as thick curtains, well-padded lounge chairs and thick pile carpet. The more absorbent the furnishings and the bigger the room, the further apart the listener and talker can be and still avoid the adverse effects of reverberation. Adjusting the source of any noise is also sensible to do when possible. For example, when the source is an electronic appliance such as TV, radio, CD or public address system, adjusting the volume or bass and treble tone controls of the device may well improve intelligibility and naturalness. Now let me share with you some helpful tips on how to avoid some of the common effective listening pitfalls. When we're tired, communication options such as pretending to understand, when in fact you have little or no idea what's being said to you, and simply avoiding problem situations and difficult conversations seems really appealing and can often appear to work. But these are not good adaptive strategies and therefore not good long-term options for you. The fact is that relying on reactive avoidance options will inevitably lead you to feeling more stressed and isolated, and with no hope of your circumstances improving. These shorter-term fixes can also cause problems for others, including your partner, and can also lead to further embarrassment, misunderstandings and confusion. Naturally, these outcomes can in turn lead to unwanted stress, anxiety and arguments. As I've explained, there's a wide range of strategies you can employ, and it's important to master a number of these. Using just one strategy, such as constantly asking people to repeat things, can get tiresome for those with whom we need to deal regularly. So try and use an imaginative mix of the strategies I've shown you. My last recommendation is to involve as many of your family members and friends as is possible. Although the discussion so far has concentrated on helping the hearing impaired, families can also participate in counselling. There are advantages to having a significant other person, such as a spouse, parent, child or friend, participate in all stages of the counselling. For more information and assistance, you're very welcome to contact us at any time.